welcome to my channel, Graceful Art Designs. Today I'm going to be painting a painting of cherry blossom trees because it is cherry blossom season. I'm doing this in oil. I've covered the canvas with a red, which I really like this particular red. It's a cadmium red, deep, and I think it's more of a cherry red, but it's perfect for this background that I want. And I've painted on the tree trunks in black, which, you know, it's not very solid black because it was onto the red. But that's just to give me a guide to where I want everything to be. Because I want it to be more about the blossoms than about the trees. But there does need to be some tree to show that it's an orchard. But these branches are going to get a whole lot thinner. So I'm starting with the sky. This background was in acrylic, so that's how I do some backgrounds. So I've made a mixture for the sky, which is ultramarine blue and white mixed together. And there's different brands to have different ultramarine blues, because this brand, it's called French ultramarine, and makes quite a different blue to that one. I think this is the one I want, but I'll see, it might not be. And I'm doing the sky first because I want to, obviously you've got to put it on some stage, do it before the blossoms, and I want to make a lot of these branches thinner. They're just, just a vague outline with the acrylic brush. But now I want to refine them as I do the sky. And so I'm using a 4-bit brush, a size 3, and the outer part I don't have to be very careful of, but as I get in to the branches, I definitely want to use this time to make the branches a lot thinner size and the scale. So in the front you might see some individual blossoms, but as they get further and further away, they will get more and more sort of just bunches of blossoms together. Let's see how that works. You definitely, to begin with, the branches need to be smaller. They need to be this thick, and you can see this kind of thickness from a distance. That's my sky done, and after doing part of the sky with the first blue, I decided I wanted to try the other ultramarine, and I preferred it. I had a darker blue, and I wanted it darker under the branches here. Also, the light will be coming from that way. I'm not drawing a sun, I'm not painting a sun, but if there was a sun, it would be on that side, and so light here, getting darker under the trees. And now that has to dry, obviously, before I put the blossoms in. And there are many different ways one can do cherry blossoms. And the trees, the blossoms can be white, they can be pink, they can be a mixture of white and pink or a bit of magenta. And they can be full trees and some less full. Some of the blossoms may have fallen, depending on what stage they're at. The blossoms only last normally for up to a week, not much more. And so I'll see how it's going to dry, and then I'll decide. A little grey colour there. I think I'll add some more brown. More thick burnt sienna. And I've brought the blue down around the trees because there's normally a kind of a blue light around the tree trunks. You might not notice it, but it's there. And also just give myself space to either increase or decrease the width of the trunks once I start painting them in with oil. So that I'll do after the other paint is dry, otherwise I'm going to be blurring the colours. And you don't have to wait, it's personal. But also I've got other things to do now. Like here I can see that branch needs to be a lot thinner. I didn't like how that turned out. I'll have to go back to that. But this is a nice kind of earthy colour. It could have a little bit more brown. Burnt sienna. Push it down here. And so normally in the rule of thirds, the top 2/3 are the sky and the lower third will be the ground cover. I'm not using a photograph as a reference, I'm just painting from my imagination after glancing through various photos of cherry orchards and seeing how different and varied they can be. And I'm just painting on the earth kind of lightly. I'm not making it smooth or particular because it's going to have some grass on it, and there might be some cherry blossoms that have fallen down, and it might change a whole lot still, but it will. And so I'm just holding the paintbrush lightly. I decided I want to make this sort of like it's going up a hill, and so this sky will be lower down and this will be going higher, and that's what I've done here. I've added a bit more brown, blending with the sky there, and even more up there, and even more up there. And I could add more trees, but this is a square canvas, 40 by 40 centimeters, and I think it's going to be a bit overcrowded if I do that. And as it is, the blossoms are virtually going to cover the whole of the top of the canvas anyway, and in fact the branches may be hanging down quite low with heavily laden with blossoms. I decided while I have the brown out, I might as well do a bit of the tree trunks. It has to be darker than the brown around them. And again, I might not take it all the way to the tips because those get so thin and so fine they look almost black. So I might do that with a different brush and in black. But obviously trees are they're quite dark trunks, the cherry trees. So I need to put more brown in them. I made quite a nice dark mixture with the brown, the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue. For the tree trunks I made this one kind of the darkest. Now with a bit of just the pure burnt sienna on my flat angle brush, I'm going to make the thinner branches. And this brush has definitely seen better days. It's a bit the worse for wear right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with it. So I'll start here from the outside. And if a bit of the red shows through, that's also fine. The red will serve to unify everything and also just gives that sort of reddish light in the background. Okay, the paint is not coming off where I want it. See, the blue is still wet, so I am mixing it with a bit of the blue. But that's neither here nor there because you really probably won't see that much of these branches. Down there. I did want them reaching up to the sky here. At the same time, I want them going across, but that might only work once the paint is dried. With all the paint wet on wet, I couldn't get the branches as thin as I wanted them. On the one hand, it doesn't really matter because they're going to be covered with the cherry blossoms. On the other hand, the cherry blossoms do grow in clumps of 5 or 6 on one thin stem off a branch. So I do need to still come back and make those thin stems, I think. Not all over because you're not going to see those in the distance, but certainly down here where they're closer to you. So I think I'll just do that once the painting is dry and it's easier to work with. So in the meantime, this is how the painting has dried overnight, and I like it. I like the way the red is showing through this blue, which was very light, and even through some of the darker blue, it's still showing quite a bit. So that's fine. And then I've had a rethink about the cherry tree trunks, and they actually they range in colour from a deep sort of cherry red to a light grey with some bands across, so either red bands or grey bands, depending on what the main colour of the tree is. So I'm going to change the colours a little bit, but first I'm going to just add in some thin branches, and I'm just using dry burnt sienna to make the thin branches for the low-hanging bunches of blooms. But you'll see them come to life when I add the blossoms on. And now I'm going to add the rings around the bark, and they don't necessarily go all the way around, little bits here and there. And then I've decided I could have either pink cherry blossom trees or white, but I'm going to have two of each because I don't want to have just a mass of pink or a mass of white. And the white will have a little magenta at the centres, and the pink will have a little yellow in the centres. And there'll be a few little green buds here and there, unopened blossoms, or where you can see the base of the blossom, which is green. And these need to be a little bit thinner. So I'll come back with my brush and remove some of it. Still using the small brush note there, don't really become visible so low down. Because I don't want to touch the branches yet, they need to dry first. I'm going to just do a few of the petals that have fallen onto the ground. And I'm using this Pebeo pink, which is a lovely pink. I decided I'm going to use this small round brush size one for the petals because it's kind of the thinnest I have. And I'm using this Rouge Lumiere Pebeo pink because it's such a pretty pink for the pink petals. But I'll start with the white ones over here. And obviously some of the ones closest to the viewer are going to be bigger, and they're kind of 5-petal blooms, but on the tree you really aren't going to see the individual blooms. You may see a few down here, but not many. So, well, you can see I've made quite a few petals, and I'll just show you a few because tomorrow I'm going to paint on my lap. I can't do this standing up, and I can't see what I'm doing. I really am just guessing, but I have no idea what it actually looks like. So I don't know if it's a pleasing shape. I don't know if there's blobs of paint sticking out. I don't know anything. Really, I need to be more in control of the painting, and the only way I can do that is to have it on my lap and to be able to turn it in all directions into the light as I need to, and then I can't photograph that, video that. So as you can see, I'm just using the tip of the brush and I'm hoping for the best, and I guess I could try and see what I'm doing in the camera. See, I can see there's a big blob there, and in the camera it looks a lot bigger than it actually is. They're very tiny. They have to be tiny because this is a tiny scale of the actual size of the tree. Blossoms, so everything has to be to scale. And also I realise I can't put the centres in now, because that will just sort of blur, the pink will blur into the white. And that would be fine if I wanted them to be all pink and white, but I don't. And here I'm just doing them more randomly. So on some of the trees I've seen, you do see individual blossoms like that, and then if you look in the distance, it's just a mass of blossoms. So I'll do a bit of both.